to do with, well, maybe the end of the world and the return of Jesus and some things of this nature. And just the other day, I was talking to a gentleman, and he told me that the world was just about to end. And that's, a statement that we very serious, so we want to give that some thought, because if the world's about to end, that's something we need to know. That's something we need to prepare for. And so he told me, and his basis was some different things that were happening in the world. And if you think about just not even the world in the grand scheme, but our specific world, last year's been kind of crazy. Between hurricanes and snowstorms that have happened here in Valdosta, and a lot of different wild things. And is there a connection with some of the wild things that are going on in the world to, well, the return of Jesus and the world ending? So where we're at in Matthew 24, this is towards the very end of the ministry of Jesus. He is just shortly after this going to be betrayed, arrested, crucified, raised from the dead, ascend into heaven. This is not long before that. And so he goes into Jerusalem, and he has his disciples with him. And in verse 1, Jesus went out and departed from the temple. His disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all of these things?" The buildings of the temple that the disciples are showing them. That's these things. "Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Verse 3 is the key to the chapter. So he comes, they're in Jerusalem, they're at the temple, the disciples, Jesus, look at all these buildings. He said, "Don't you know that all of these stones that you're looking at are going to be thrown down upon one another?" A little bit later, they come to him privately. "What are you talking about?" Okay? And they ask him there either 2 or 3 questions, depending how you read it. In verse 3, "Tell us, when will these things be?" When they ask, when will these things be, what you just said about the stones that we're looking at in Jerusalem being tossed down upon one another, when's that going to happen? And then they ask, "And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And I say 2 or 3 questions depending how you read it, because I don't know from their standpoint, did they equate the return of Jesus, his coming, and the end of the age, whether they equated that as the same thing or as 2 separate things. But Jesus is going to answer. And he starts with the first one. The first question he asked, when are these things going to happen? You just said all these stones in Jerusalem are going to be thrown down. When's that happening? And so in verse 4, Jesus answered, "Take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. All of these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. These are the beginnings of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and will kill you. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. Because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all of the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come." So he says, you're going to start to see these signs build up. You're going to see earthquakes. You're going to see wars. You're going to see people hating one another. False prophets. All of these things are going to happen. And you know the end's coming. He said the gospel is going to go out throughout the world. The end will come. And he gave them one little glimpse of hope within that in verse 13. "He who endures to the end shall be saved." So the things that he was saying are coming, the earthquakes, the wars, rumors of wars, the false gospels, all these things, is if you can endure that, you're going to be saved. And then in verse 15, "When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. Woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. For when there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh shall be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Now hold here for a second. We're going to back up and talk a little bit more about this. But as Jesus is talking, look, there's going to be earthquakes, wars, rumors of wars, all these things. The end is going to come. When that happens, this abomination of desolation, that sounds scary. This is going to happen. And when that abomination of desolation comes, he says, run, flee to the mountains. Don't go back for your clothes. Hope you're not pregnant because you got to move. And he says, unless the days are going to be shortened, nobody can handle it. He says, but don't worry, they're going to be shortened for the elect's sake, for the Christians, right? For the people who are in the church. He says days are going to be shortened. That's kind of an amazing thing. We're going to come back to that. In verse 23, if anyone says to you, look, here's the Christ there, do not believe it. Now that's interesting. As all this is happening, this abomination, desolation, all these things, he said there's going to be somebody who says the Christ is here. And he says, Christ isn't here. Keep that in your mind. Verse 24, false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs, wonders to deceive, possibly even the elect. I've told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, don't go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms, don't believe it. As lightning comes from the east and the flash to the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles shall be gathered together. Let's stop for just a second. Did we just read about the end of the world? Is this something where we stand right now, 2025? Are we looking forward to this abomination of desolation coming? Are we looking this? And I'm here to tell you right now, the answer is no. We have not read one thing yet this morning that applies to the end of the world. Everything that we have read so far is in our rearview mirror. It's behind. It's past. It's done with. Before we get into why, I want us to make sure we know for a fact that this is not talking about the return of Jesus. If we just stay in the same chapter, come down to verse 36. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. I'm going to read the rest of it, but we'll come back to it. But just drop back down to verse 42. Watch therefore, you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. Know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. He's going to then spend the rest of 24, all into chapter 25 about you need to be ready, you need to be prepared. He's going to talk about what it means to be ready and be prepared, because we don't know when the Lord is coming. There will be no signs. There will be no warnings. Just like that, the Lord returns. There will not be a yellow light letting us know to slow down because the red light's coming. We're just going to be going in red light. He's just going to happen. So we've got to be ready. We're going to circle back to that, but I want to make sure we understand that, because there will be no signs for the return of Jesus. Consistent throughout the New Testament about that, Jesus said nothing different. So now here in 24, he is talking about there's going to be a lot of signs. And when there's a lot of signs, there's something you got to do. What were these signs for? Why were they supposed to do what Jesus is telling them to do? What was the first question they asked? When are these things going to happen? What are these things? Jesus and his disciples looking at the temple and saying, every one of these stones is going to get knocked over. They're going to be sitting on top of one another. And then they say, well, when's that going to happen? Here's when it's going to happen. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's going to be earthquakes. There's going to be pestilences. There's going to be false teachers, all these things. Let it be known, end is near. And when you see the abomination of desolation, there in verse 15, that part always stands out to me because that's a scary sounding verse. When the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, I'm in 15, whoever reads it, let her stand. When you see those who are in Judea, flee to the mountains. That's the key. That's the sign. That's to let them know it's time to run, the abomination of desolation. I remember working at Sam's. I used to work in the freezer section at night. And I was there, and a gentleman come up, we'd talk Bible, and he'd say, in the book of Revelation, what do you think the abomination of desolation is? I said, sir, actually the abomination of desolation is not in the book of Revelation. He does not appear. He's not in there. He's in the book of Matthew. He'd look at me by, well, what about the abomination of revelation, of desolation in Revelation? I said, no, it's not there. It's right here. But what is it? Because it sounds like something we read about in Revelation. Hold your place here. We're going to come right back to it. And flip forward a little bit to Luke. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, it's our parallel account, right? It's Luke by inspiration. It's the exact same thing that we just read, right? Same setting, same dialogue, same warnings, right? It's Luke's account of it. But the way he phrases it, I think gives us a little clarity, right? Verse 7, what we already read. Teacher, what would these things be? In verse 8, Jesus starts to answer, take heed. Many will come in my name, saying, I am he. The time is drawn near. He's going to go on in verse 11 to talk about the earthquakes. He's going to go on and keep going throughout the whole thing. And then in verse 20, here's where we get to our parallel, the abomination of desolation. He says in verse 20, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Let those from Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. Let those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Woe to those who are pregnant. And he's going to go on the same thing that we were just reading in Matthew. Matthew calls it the abomination of desolation. When you see that, it's time to run. Luke makes it a little bit more clear. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, it's time to go. What Jesus was talking about was an event that would happen approximately 40 years after he said those words. When Jerusalem would be surrounded by the Roman armies, and the Roman armies would come in, and they would tear down the temple and drive many people out. What he was talking about was God's judgment, Luke used the words vengeance, against those Israelite people and the ways they had twisted things and twisted their law. This is what we read about it constantly in the Old Testament. When we read through in Isaiah and Jeremiah and many of the minor prophets and all of these things. Those same messages when all of those prophets of old, when they'd come to various areas, sometimes it was God's people like Israel and Judah. Sometimes it was foreign nations like Nineveh. But it would be a message saying, God's judgment is coming upon you unless things change. Jesus was the one delivering the message. And he's saying it's happening. The Roman armies are going to surround Jerusalem, and they're going to start destroying things. And when it's time, you got to go. You got to run. Don't go back for your clothes. Hope you're not pregnant because you got to move. Someone's going to say when you get in hiding that the Christ is here, don't believe them. So as we go back to Matthew, that whole passage that we just read, let's pretend for a second that it is about the end of the world. What's fleeing to the mountains going to do to help you? If at the end of the world, now first, as God's people, I hope we are looking for and hastening the return of the Lord. As God's people, the return of Jesus is not something that we need to run from. That's going to be the best day of our lives. Right? The return of Jesus, depending on how you look at it, it's either the best or the worst. In school, I was never the biggest, I wasn't the greatest student in the world. Should have done better, should have studied more, didn't do it though. And so report card day was always a day that was on the calendar. Now it's an email or something like that, but back then, they'd send you the little manila folder, you had to go hand deliver it to your parents. And I didn't like that day. Some of my friends, they're like, oh, it's report card day. That's wonderful. I'm like, why do you like report card day? I got good grades. I'm going to go show it to my parents, and they're going to say good job, or they're going to give me some money or take me out to dinner or something like that. For me, I was like, I don't like report card day. That's punishment. I'm about to be on restriction for a little bit, right? I love my Game Boy, they're going to take it away for a week or so. It's the same with the return of Jesus. How do we look at the return of Jesus? If we're right with God, man, we can't wait. We want it to happen today. But for those who are not with God, well, that's going to be a rough day. And it's a day some might try to run. But what we're saying right here in Matthew 24, running to the mountains and hiding, if you're not right with the Lord on the return of Jesus, that's not going to help. So as we get back into our text, because they asked that first question, when will these things be? He tells you there's going to be signs. There's going to be things to let you know it's about to happen. Then there's going to be a sign that it's starting. Jerusalem surrounded by the Roman armies. Here's what you need to do. You need to run. You need to hide. Here's what you do not need to do. Don't come out when someone says the Christ is here, because he's not. Stay hidden. Now, 29, this is the trickiest part of the passage, I believe. Because it sure sounds like the return of Jesus, but it's not the return of Jesus. In verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. Stars will fall from heaven. The powers of the heavens will be shaken. And the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. He will send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. And they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the earth. And we say, wait a minute, that sure sounds like the return of Jesus. We know 1 Thessalonians 4, when Jesus returns, there will be the sound of a trumpet, there will be a shout, there will be the voice of an archangel. He will gather up his elect. Is that what he's talking about here? It can't be. He cannot be talking about the return of Jesus here, because again, he's about to go into a lot of reasons as to why there's not going to be any signs and there will not be any warning. If you get into your Old Testament, Lord, and time's not going to permit us to do so right now, but you start going through those prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, and again, many of the minor prophets, you go through them. And you're going to read that exact same kind of language, with the sun being darkened, and the stars falling, and the Son of Man appearing. That same type of what they call apocalyptic language. This grand language to let you know God's judgment is about to go down. And that's the idea here. Matthew specifically, talking to a Jewish crowd, reading that is going to immediately trigger reminders of the prophets of old. We're not studying the book of Revelation right now, but when you get into the book of Revelation, 98% of which is in our rear view mirror as we stand here right now. And you're going to read that same kind of language. Why? Because it's about judgment upon Rome for their persecutions of Christian people. We always let the clear help us to understand the unclear. And the clear is that we don't know when Jesus is going to return. So the unclear passage we just read, they can't contradict that. Let's keep going. In verse 32, Jesus said, learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. You also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at its doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Did you catch that? First of all, he's telling them, don't you know there's signs to let you know something's going to happen? And everything that I've been talking about, everything that we've read up to this point in Matthew 24, he said the generation that he's talking to, he said, you will not pass away till it all happens. A generation, about 40 years. What happened? History records about 40 years after Jesus said it. Rome came, surrounded Jerusalem, took them out. And that's what he's talking about right here. So in 34, surely I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things shall take place. Heaven and earth will pass away. My words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour, no one knows. Not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So if you flip back real quick to verse 3. After Jesus had just told them, look at all these stones, these buildings in Jerusalem, they're going to be tore up. That night, they go back, they ask him privately in verse 3, tell us, when will these things be? He just did. And he capped it off by saying, this generation won't pass away till it happens. Then they ask, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And in verse 36, of that day, no one knows. 37. As the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. Think about that. Noah, a preacher of righteousness, he told everybody flood's coming. They didn't believe him. He builds the ark. They didn't believe him. Him, his wife, 3 sons, their wives, they get on the ark. God shut the door. Flood still didn't come. They were on the ark for a week before the flood came. Throughout that week, imagine how many people were laughing. Throughout that week, imagine people, man, what are they doing just sitting there? Ark, wait, not a boat, there's a big old box. They're just sitting in this big old box, and they've been there for multiple days, and you got to imagine there's somebody just laughing. I don't know, and I have zero idea. It's full speculation. But who was the first one inside the ark to kind of just look at Noah side-eyed like, sure? Are you positive what God told you? But sure enough, just like that, the flood came. People were just living their lives, eating, drinking, giving in marriage, just living their lives. And all of a sudden, the flood came. He says that's how it's going to be at the return of Jesus. We're going to be living our lives, maybe sitting, assembling as we are right now. Maybe sitting in Chili's, eating a little queso dip. Sitting at a ball game. Just living a very normal life. And then just like that, Jesus returns. Verse 40. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left. Did you notice in both of those examples? As 2 of them there will be caught up to heaven. There was no time to run. There was no time to go hide. Why? Just like that. In verse 42, watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. Know this, if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. He uses this very basic logic there. We had, it's probably been, 15 years ago. Got a house broken into. It was a normal day. I went over to Georgia Christian, taught Bible class. I'm going to run home real quick, just grab a snack. And as I go home and I park in the driveway, I had just noticed there was a comb on the ground. And it wasn't the type of comb, my kids were young at the time. It wasn't the same type that I or Carrie would use. And I look at it, just kind of caught, just kind of pulls up the alarm. And so I'm just kind of looking. So I approached the door slowly. And it was ajar. You could tell somebody had busted through it and then shut it. And so I had called, my father lived down the street, so I'd called him, called the authorities, waited outside, wanted to go in, but was trying to be smart, waited to go in. Sure enough, we went in, man, they tore the place upside down like I had hidden diamonds in there. Man, they got a broken TV and just some other junk. I don't have anything worth stealing. But they tore that place upside down. And when they did so, my wife, Carrie, she was, man, there's somebody in my house. That's all she could think of was like, man, there's something in my house. She didn't feel comfortable for a little bit. All I could think about was if I could just go back in time one day. And I don't know what exactly I would have done. Right? I'm thinking, we didn't have a security system at the time. Would I have installed a security system? Would I have gotten a dog? I didn't have a dog at the time. Hid in my broken TV so they couldn't steal it. Called the authorities so they could stake out. Get a couple buddies and just hide behind the couch with a bat. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I would have done, but you better believe I'd have done something different. I would have prepared if I knew the thief was coming. But that's the point of a thief. They don't tell you when they're coming. They come at a time you don't expect. Jesus is telling you, I'm coming at an hour you do not expect. So you better be ready. Don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And you need to get ready. In verse 44, one more time. You also be ready that the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. And for every few years, someone comes up with something of how we know the Lord's going to return. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon religion, 3 times he predicted the return of Jesus. 0 for 3. I remember in my lifetime, the first one was Y2K. Some of y'all remember that, right? That was a thing. If you are too young to remember that, I'm telling you, that was a thing. There were a lot of people. And I'm not talking about, what some might refer to as crazy. I'm talking about rational, biblical people who were just like, man, the world's going to end 99. Strike at midnight. We go from 99 to 2000, world's going to end. I felt confident it was not. For one, Jesus tells us it's going to be an hour you do not expect, not an hour you do expect. Also, I never quite understood. I didn't know if it was going to end East Coast time, midnight. West Coast had a few hours I didn't know how that was going to work. I felt confident it wasn't. Remember 2012? It was like the Aztec calendar or something like that. People thought the world was going to end 2012. Every time there's a war, anytime there's something wild that's happening in the world, people tell you, the world's about to end. It might be about to end. I have no idea. But there's not going to be any signs. There's not going to be anything to let us know. I want you to go to 2 Peter towards the end of your Bible. 2 Peter. And in chapter 3, verse 10, it's pretty much what we just read. But I want to look and see what Peter says both before and after. But first, verse 10, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, the elements will melt with fervent heat, both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Okay, it's pretty much what Jesus just told us about the return of Jesus being at a thief in the night. He went into a little bit more detail about the heavens, not heaven, the heavens, the sky and the universe, all things like that, and the earth, that which we're on, that's all gone. It's over and done with for that. Well, what did he say before it? See, he was talking about there were people who were saying, false teachers that were saying, God doesn't do anything. Look, he's not sending Jesus back. And so Peter deals with the question of, well, if Jesus is coming back, why is he waiting so long? And some of us may have, at some point in our life, may have had that same thought. Things are getting rough sometimes, and we're like, come on, Jesus, just come back. Why are we dealing with all of this? Let's do heaven. Well, he answers it in verse 8 and 9. In verse 8, he says, beloved, do not forget this one thing. With the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness. Stop right there in the middle of the verse. When it says to the Lord, a day is 1,000, 1,000 is a day, it does not mean that when we mark off 1,000, years on our calendar, it's just been a day for the Lord, or he's 1,000 up there and then here it's one day. There is no time in the spiritual of God. What it means is no matter how long time passes in our eyes, if God said he's going to do it, he's going to do it. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise. I'm slack concerning my promise. Right? At the end of service today, I might look at my guy Zach over there. I said, Zach, I'm a little short on lunch today. I want to go grab me some Zaxby's. Can I borrow 20? All right, no problem. I got you. I'm going to give it to you tomorrow. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to get you tomorrow. He gives me the 20. Well, tomorrow comes. He texts me. You going to bring me my 20? Sorry, I forgot about it. Let me say. I run into him a week later. Hey, you got that 20 you borrowed me? No cash on me. Let me hit the ATM. Avoid him. Month passes. Year passes. It's been 2 years. We run into each other again. Hey, you got that 20? Oh, it slipped my mind. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years pass. He sees me somewhere. Doesn't even say anything. He knows I owe him 20, but he doesn't ask for it. Why? He has given up on that 20. Because every day that passes, my word diminishes. If I say I'm going to do it, every day that goes on, it's probably less likely that I'm going to do it. The Lord, though, is not slack concerning his promise. He told Abraham, you're going to receive the promised land, 430 years. He told the devil in Genesis 3:15 that he was going to send Jesus. 4,000 years. Happened. We could keep going on down the list, but if the Lord says something's going to happen, he has an unblemished record. So when we think about the return of Jesus, it could go another 10,000 years. Lord says that that's going to happen, it's going to happen. So then again, well then why? Why are we waiting so long? Go back to verse 9 really quickly. Said the Lord is not slack concerning his promise. Doesn't matter, 1,000 years, one day, doesn't matter. He's going to say it. As some count slackness, he is long suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. He's trying to give us a chance. Every day that goes by that the Lord does not return, that's an opportunity. He's trying to give somebody a chance to follow him. Every day that we wake up, that's a chance and a choice. That's a chance to follow God and a choice whether or not we're going to do it. And we need to take advantage of it. Why? Because verse 10, the day of the Lord is a thief in the night. He's coming at a time we do not expect. Really quickly before we close out, verse 11. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God? He goes on from there. When we study in Matthew 24, it's not just to say, well, they're wrong because they think an earthquake tells us the Lord's coming. No, it's to make sure that we understand false hope of thinking we're going to get a sign for the return of Jesus. That's dangerous. We need to understand the Lord could come back at any moment. So we better be ready. Our conduct, our godliness needs to be aligned with the Lord, because when he returns, we want to be those that he calls up to heaven. We want to be those who spend eternity with him in glory. Thank you very much for your time.